Bibles, turn to Mark chapter 8. Mark chapter 8. Has there ever been anyone in your life that you respected, that you looked up to, that you just loved to be around because you wanted to just hear stories that they could tell about their life, things they've been through? For me, I have a few people like that in my life. Right? My grandfather was one of those. I remember as a child crawling up in his lap, listening to different stories that he could tell about different things that he had done. He was drafted into the war, and he made it all the way out to California, went through basic training, did all of that stuff, and then he just out of the clear blue got sent back home, really for no reason. But hearing different stories that he would tell, different life happenings, that just him growing up and them farming just for years and years, and not really having a whole lot, but always being content with what they had, thankful for what they had. I just love hearing stories like that. I had an uncle who served in World War II, and he drove a diesel tanker to keep the different, whatever you call that stuff, equipment up and running and fueled up and all of that, and the different stories he would tell about being shot at and them trying to blow up the convoy of trucks that he was in and all of that sort of stuff. Very fascinating. There's a guy that served in Lufkin. He was not a part of our church, but he went to a church down the road, but he and I became really good friends. He was early 80s at that time, and I would just go over and spend time with him and listen to different stories. Before I went into ministry, I worked in the oil field, and he worked for Texaco for years and years and years, and so the different stories of how they used to do things and all that was just very fascinating to me. And then I think, as they have those memories, as they have those stories, I think about my own life, and I think more really kind of physically towards myself, and I think about the different scars on my hands, my legs, just wherever I have them, right? Those scars are a physical representation of a physical change in a surface, right? So whether it be in the ground, whether it be in your skin, whatever, a scar is the physical representation of a physical change in a surface. Right? So like on my thumb right here, I thought, it would be smart one day to climb a tree, and I couldn't reach the lowest limb, and so I used a hoe and hooked it over the limb to pull myself up, and it slipped off. Now I have a scar on my thumb. I have a scar on my knee. We were playing football, and the football went through the fence, and I don't really even know what I was going to do, but I ended up getting in the fence, and it cut my leg. I have a scar on my lip up here where a light fixture hit me in the face and knocked my teeth in my lip. I've got football scars from a knee getting under my helmet and hit me in the face. That was not good. It actually happened at Joaquin, and maybe that's why I don't really still like Joaquin just a whole lot. But anyway, I know I've got a lot of Joaquin folks over here, so I'm going to try not to look that way. But really, these scars, they're more than just a physical representation. They're stories that go with it. For us men, a lot of times it's bragging rights to our kids, right? We like to say, hey man, you won't believe what I was doing when this happened, when I got this scar. And most of the time it's a story of us doing something really dumb and we ended up getting hurt. But for some reason we think that's bragging rights. But I want to remind you, before we get into our main text, I want to remind you of a story that we read about in Scripture. And it's really in 3 of the 4 Gospels that we read about. This guy is mentioned. But I want to call your attention to him. And his name is Simon of Cyrene. Now, how many of you know what story Simon of Cyrene is in? Does that name ring a bell to you anywhere? All right, before we get there, I told you to go to Mark chapter 8. Let's look at verse 34, and this will kind of lay the basis of where we're going this morning. We're going to bungee jump off of this to a bunch of different places, all right? Mark chapter 8, verse 34, and he summoned the crowd with his disciples and said to them, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. All right, there's some directives in there. That's what we're going to unpack today. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. So as we jump back to the question I just asked you about Simon of Cyrene, and this man, you'll know who he is as soon as I mention him to you. If you will, turn over to Mark chapter 15, just a few chapters over. I want you to look at verse 21. Mark chapter 15, verse 21. This man named Simon Cyrene. It says this. This is scripture. Now, let me just kind of set up what's going on here, all right? The crucifixion is about to take place. So Jesus has already been beaten. He's already been condemned to death. And they're on their way walking out of the city for him to be crucified, okay? And this is what we read. Mark chapter 15, verse 21. They pressed into service a passerby coming from the country, Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to bear his cross. Now, how many of you remember Simon of Cyrene? Right? Everybody pretty much remembers that guy. But we don't really know a whole lot about him because aside from this one verse or the verses in the other Gospels that allude to him physically picking up the cross of Jesus and carrying it out to the place that Jesus would be crucified, we don't really hear a whole lot about this guy. But I kind of have an inquisitive mind, and I like to know about people and what they did and kind of what their story was, what their background was. So follow me for just a minute, because if you just read this one verse, they pressed into service a passerby coming from the country, Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to bear his cross. You can just take it at face value and just move on and not really think a whole lot about it. But see, my mind goes back to sitting in my granddad's lap, right, and asking questions about different things that happen. So when I think about this man, Simon of Cyrene, there's a lot of questions that pop in my mind that I would like to ask this guy, right? Like, what did Jesus really look like on that day? Right? Was there truly compassion in his eyes? Even as he was being led out to be put on the cross, was there compassion? We know as he was on the cross, he cried out, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing," right? And so we know that he had compassion, but could you see it in his face? Could you, as you looked into his eyes, what could you see? How heavy was the cross? Did you stay and watch as the full crucifixion took place and they put our Lord to death? Did you see the whole thing? Did you watch it? What actually happened? What took place? Did you stay in town the 3 days? Because he said he was going to rise again. Did you stay in town the 3 days to see if he really did? Or did you just leave because you had played a part in this crucifixion? Luckily, Scripture answers some of these questions for us. This man, by most historical accounts, came from a pretty prominent, well-off family. There's debate whether his faith was in Christ prior to this or if he came to faith in Christ after this. We do see in this passage that he was a father, right? It said the father of Rufus and Alexander. We know that as you study through Scripture, these two guys were brought up again in Scripture, and that by all accounts, they were pretty strong. Just by Mark referencing them here in this passage would allude to the fact that they were known within the church at that time, or else he wouldn't have made mention of them. If these were just two people that nobody had any idea who he was or who they were, more than likely Mark wouldn't have mentioned it. But he mentions it. Paul references Rufus in Romans 16:13 when he says, "Greet Rufus, a choice man in the Lord, also his mother and mine." Luke, the physician, references Alexander in Acts in chapter 4 and chapter 19. And so it's logical that this man, this Simon of Cyrene, had a faith in Jesus. And not only did he have a faith in Jesus, he passed it down to his children. And so if you fast forward past that, can you imagine Simon's grandchildren, right? So Cyrene was in northern Africa, up kind of where Libya is now. That's where that was. So as he got back home and they were making a home for themselves, and his grandkids come around. Maybe Simon is 80, 85, 90 years old, and his grandkids crawl in his lap. And my granddaddy's name was Pop, so I'm going to use Pop. I said, "Pop, tell me about the day you carried the cross of Jesus. What was that like? What did you see? What did you feel?" Tell me that story again. And can you imagine? I think to my grandfather, and very seldom did my grandfather ever cry. Did he ever show any really type of emotion besides just being a jokester and kind of crazy from time to time, right? He didn't show, he was kind of a manly man. He didn't show his emotions or let people know really how he felt. Very seldom have I ever seen my grandfather cry. Just very specific moments in time that I can remember. But can you imagine his grandkids crawling into his lap and saying, "Hey, tell me about that time." And he began to explain exactly what unfolded on that day. Maybe a tear trickling down as he thought back to all that our Lord had gone through that day. The day that he bore the cross of Jesus. If you fast forward to after the crucifixion and the resurrection, and Jesus appeared, right, to his disciples, and there was one disciple that wasn't with him. Do you remember who that was? He's been given a nickname throughout history from the time this event that we're going to talk about for a minute happened. Thomas, right? And we all call him Doubting Thomas. Right? So Jesus appeared to the disciples, but Thomas wasn't there to see him physically. The disciples came back and they reported to Thomas, "Hey, this is what happened. We just saw Jesus. He's alive. He's not in the tomb anymore. He's alive." Do you remember what Thomas said to the disciples? Look over at John chapter 20, verse 25. If you want to flip there, you can. If not, just reference it and I'll read it to you. It says this, John chapter 20, verse 25. So the disciples were saying to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the imprint of the nails, and put my finger into the place of the nails, and put my hand into the side, I will not believe." Did you catch that? Let's read that again. This was Thomas's response to the other disciples telling them that we have seen the Lord. And Thomas's response was, "Unless I see in his hands the imprint of the nails, and put my finger into the place of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." Go back to the definition of the skull. Right? It's the physical representation of a physical change that's happened in the surface. Right? So when they drove the nails into the hands of Jesus, and then he came back alive, and there were holes in his hands where they had put the nails. There was a hole in his side where they pierced his side with a spear while he was on the cross. Thomas said, "Until I see those physical scars, until I can touch them, until I can put my hand in his side, I will not believe." Now, this isn't just some guy off the street we're talking about. This is one of the disciples. This is somebody who traveled with Jesus the 3 years that he did ministry. This is somebody who intimately knew Jesus and followed Jesus everywhere he went. He knew everything that was going on in the story. And when he came back and they told him that Jesus really did what he said he was going to do, he said, "Nope, until I see it, until I feel it, until I see the scars and touch them, I will not believe." Please hear me. There are some people who need to see the spiritual scars in our life to believe. To believe. Because you see, here's the problem. We have a lot of Christians. We have a lot of people who claim to be Christians that do claim to be Christians, but there's no physical scars. Meaning there's been no change in their life. So are they Christians? If there's not life transformation, there is not salvation. Because it radically changes you. You're no longer the same. So when Duncan accepted Christ and he asked Jesus into his life, all things were passed away. Behold, everything's new. He's a new creation. And there's things in his life, there's things in my life as a Christian that I can no longer do because I'm saved. I'm a Christian and I should be living a life that reflects that. There will be changes in our life. Go back to Mark 8:34. If anyone wishes to come after me, hopefully you're past that point. Hopefully you're past the point of choosing to follow Jesus, being a Christ follower, being a Christian. Hopefully everyone in here is saved. I can't take that as a for sure thing, and I will never just assume that everybody is saved, because the fact of the matter is that's not true. But just like for Thomas, there are people in our lives, if we are a Christian, who need to see those changes that happen in our lives. The physical change. As we think about that, as we think about Simon of Cyrene bearing the cross of Jesus, and very likely due to the weight and how it was carried and all of that, he more than likely bore scars in his back from carrying the cross, right? But as another pastor has said before, most Christians today buy into a cheap grace, a cheap gospel. It's not the true gospel. It's whatever's easy for you. It's whatever you can adapt to your life to make it fit your needs. But you see, the gospel don't work like that. Gospel is very plain. The gospel is very explicit in how we are to carry it, how we are to respond to it. And if there's been life transformation, that they ought to be able to see a difference in us. Many times, the difference isn't there. We claim something, but we don't live it. So this morning, if you're here and you've never chosen to be a follower of Christ, if you have not chosen to come after Him, if you have not chosen to be His follower, to receive Him, the free gift of salvation, then everything else beyond this doesn't apply to you. You can't apply this to your life because you first have to be a Christian. That's the step number one if we're looking at steps. So in sermon notes, if you want point number one, you got to pick it up, right? You got to pick up the gift. It's the free gift of salvation. But if we're going to pick it up, then we have to be ready to put it down. Point number two. That's real quick, right? Point number two. You got to put it down. You say, well, what are you talking about? Look back at Mark chapter 8, verse 34. He summoned the crowd, and with his disciples he said to them, if anyone wishes to come after me, we just covered that, right? So you got to accept Him first. You have to be a Christ follower first, a Christian first. He must deny himself. And that's where the problem comes in, right? We don't want to deny ourselves. We live in a consumeristic society where we want everything at our beck and call when we want it, right here, right now, whatever I want, whenever I want it. And we don't want to deny ourselves anything. But you see, that's not the gospel. Biblically, that's not what we're called to do. So think about the physical scars and the shoulders and the back of Simon of Cyrene. Think back to the Apostle Paul. Do you realize all that Paul went through? Do you realize exactly what all took place? If anyone could boast in the sufferings that he went through in his life, it would have been Paul. Look over, turn with me, 2 Corinthians chapter 11. I was telling Greg this morning, I usually don't jump around this much, but it's very vital that we understand and we see exactly the type of sacrifice and what it truly means to lay stuff down. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, starting in verse 22. This is Paul speaking here, and all these people have been bragging about their sufferings in the Lord, and in comparison to what Paul had been through, it really didn't hold a candle to what Paul had been through. And if we're honest with ourselves, the sufferings that we go through because of our relationship with Christ, if we're honest about it, it really can't hold a candle to what some of these folks went through. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, starting verse 22. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they Israelites? So am I. Are they descendants of Abraham? So am I. Are they servants of Christ? I speak as if I'm insane. I more so. In far more labors and far more imprisonment. Have you ever been imprisoned because of your faith in Christ? No, I'll answer that one for you. Beaten times without number, often in danger of death. Have you ever been in danger of death because of your faith in Christ? No. 5 times I received from the Jews 39 lashes. It was said that 40 lashes would kill a person. 5 times I received from the Jews 39 lashes. That's a whooping. 3 times I have been beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I have spent in the deep. I have been on frequent journeys in dangers from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from my countrymen, dangers from the Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers on the sea, dangers among false brethren. I have been in labor and hardship through many sleepless nights and hunger and thirst, often without food and cold and exposure. Have you ever been hungry, without food, without water, in cold and exposure? I haven't. I hope you haven't. Apart from such external things, there is the daily pressure on me of concern for all the churches. Paul is saying, listen, if it could be gone through, I've been put through it. I've experienced it. Yet it's worth it. It's worth it. So he got it. He realized he was no longer his own. If you claim Jesus as Lord, then you are his servant, his bondservant. You are responsible to him. And so when the Lord says to do something, you do it. You don't get to question. You don't get to say, nope, I don't want to do that. I tell you, my dad was not, I guess, my Lord. I mean, obviously he was my father, but in a governmental way, he was not my Lord. He was my father. But I promise you, if my dad told me when I was growing up, hey, you're going to do this, if I didn't do it, it wasn't good at the Roberson household. Right? There was going to be consequences for me not minding, me not doing what my father told me to do. Yet we claim that he is Lord. We claim that he is our Father, yet we don't pay any attention to him. Because we don't want to lay it down. We don't want to put it down. We don't want to put things down that are so convenient and easy and maybe even in our own minds fun. And so we bear no scars. There's been no change in us. We're the same pre or post-salvation than we were pre-salvation, meaning salvation never happened. So what are some of those things that we need to put down? Well, maybe it's some relationships. Maybe it's some relationships. Maybe there's people in your life who are leading you down a path that is not bringing you closer to Christ. It's drawing you away from Christ. Maybe you need to put those relationships down. Maybe it's some prejudices. Please hear me, and I don't really know any other way to say this than just to say it. So if you are not loving, if you are not compassionate, if you are not welcoming to everyone who Jesus welcomes at the cross, you are sinful. You are in sin. You are living in sin, unrepentant sin. We must reach out. We must care for. We must welcome anyone Christ welcomed at the cross. You remember who all he welcomed to the cross? John 3:16. For God so loved the world. Prejudices. Religiosity. We get this thought in our mind that for some reason we're holier than thou because we come to church every Sunday. That makes us better than everybody else. Or maybe because we don't struggle with this sin or that sin, then it's really no big deal. We don't really have to have compassion over there. What happens is we forget who we were before we were saved. If we've been saved. see, if we forget who we were before we were saved, then we'll lose compassion for those who are lost. We'll lose compassion for those who are lost. Maybe we need to check our theology at the door. We say, uh-oh, it's getting in deep waters. Please hear me just a second. The lost person does not care whether you are pre-trib or post-trib. It doesn't matter to them. The lost person couldn't care less your beliefs on eschatology. The lost person couldn't give one rip whether you're a Calvinist or an Arminianist. They want to know Jesus. They want to know the love of Jesus. That's it. So maybe we ought to check our theology at the door. Not that theology doesn't play a part, and not that we shouldn't know why we do the things that we do. Those things can be a hindrance for us going and sharing the gospel. See, we can get in here and we can discuss and we can debate and we can talk about whether this is right or whether that's right or what this scripture means or what that scripture means. All I know is, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, and He called us as those who believe that to go out and tell other people about it. So if they're Calvinistic, then maybe that they'll realize that they're predestined. If they're Arminians, maybe they'll come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. Nobody knows if it's going to be pre-trib or post-trib. We can debate that. We can talk about it. But the fact of the matter is, it ain't happened. We don't know what's going to happen. So it don't really matter. Maybe we need to check some of our habits. Maybe we need to put down some of our habits. There's some that are very unhealthy and ungodly. Some that are maybe even socially acceptable. The things that we know don't line up with God's Word. We start to talk about habits, and we began to go to all the hot topic issues, right? Maybe it's drugs, maybe it's drinking, maybe it's sexual habits, whether it be hetero or homo, looking at pornography. All of that stuff runs rampant through the church. Not just our world, the church. So let's not be so naive to believe that we're just on the inside and we're shielded from all of those things, and none of us in here struggle with any of those things. It happens. It happens often. Maybe if we don't struggle with those are the things we go to, but we don't mind pointing those things out, especially if they're in other people. We don't want to point them out in our own life, but we'll look at somebody else and say, man, look at that guy. What about just having a bad thought about something? What about gossip? About gluttony. So all those things are sinful. All those things cause separation from Christ. Those hit a little closer to home. Many times the gossiping happens in the form of prayer requests. You need to pray for so-and-so, because can you believe that they, whatever, you couldn't no more care less. Pray for them or not. You just want to blast their information all over. What about the sins of omission? Those are just sins of commission. Right? We choose to do those things. What about the sins of omission? Things that we know we ought to do and don't do. Knowing to do right and not doing it. Right? We know we ought to spend time with God. Yet many times, the only time that we spend with God is on Sunday morning. Maybe Sunday nights if we have Sunday night maybe Wednesday night. Right? This whole past week, all we've heard about is celebrating life, right? Being pro-life and doing, doing marches. And last Sunday, we had a march that came from Brookshire's over to the river stage and had a worship service over there. It was wonderful. It was great. They had one in Shreveport yesterday or sometime, right? So I'm not debating that, but here's my problem. I think many times we're anti-abortion, not pro-life. There's a difference. There's a difference in being anti-abortion and pro-life. Here's the difference. If you're pro-life, you would fight for the life of the baby after the baby gets here. Not just before it gets here. You would fight for the mother who maybe made a mistake that a lot of us have made in our life, and she just kind of got caught in the act, and she chooses to instead of running from that and doing away with the baby, she carries the baby, and then we neglect her and we shun her because she had a baby out of wedlock. That's kind of where some of that gossiping comes back in, right? So are we pro-life or are we anti-abortion? How much care are we giving to the mother who made a mistake and chose not to end the life of the baby? You realize just in Louisiana, if one family from 1/7 of the churches were to adopt a baby, there would be 0 orphans in Louisiana. One family from 1/7 of the churches would adopt one baby. There would be 0 orphans in the state of Louisiana. If one family from about 3/4 of the Southern Baptist churches that are a part of the Louisiana Baptist Convention would adopt one child, there would be no orphans in Louisiana. None. So are we pro-life? Are we anti-abortion? Maybe we need to drop some of our responsibilities. Some of our responsibilities, those frivolous things that we put more importance on than the Word of God and how we're supposed to live as Christians. Right? We got ceramics class on Monday night. We got clogging on Tuesday. And we got CB Hand Radio informational class on Wednesday. And we got this and that. And my little boy's going to be the next David Beckham. And he's got practice 14 times a week. Frivolous things. But yet what do? They take precedence many times over our relationship with Christ. Right? We don't miss games so we can go to church, do we? No, we miss church so we can go to games. For the most part. Please don't misconstrue what I'm saying. Sports aren't bad. I love them. I play them. I enjoy doing all of those things. But if they are taking the place of God in your life, that's a problem. That's a problem. That's something we need to put down. Maybe it's our phones. Maybe it's our cell phones. Maybe we ought to quit tweeting and Facebook and Instagramming and Snapchatting and everything else you can do on the phone. I don't even know what else you can do. But maybe we ought to put those down and pick up our Bible instead, right? Sins of omission, knowing what to do and not doing it. We know we need to spend time in God's Word. We know we need to talk to Him. We know we need to spend intimate time with Him. Yet we fill our time with everything else in the world. Maybe it's our titles. Maybe it's our titles. I mentioned to a couple of people, I went to an evangelism conference Monday this past week. And we were asked, most of the crowd was pastors in there. And we were asked, when was the last time you shared the gospel not behind the pulpit? You talk about getting hit in the eyes with a 2x4. Maybe we need to check our titles and just do what Jesus tells us to do. Picking up the cross of Jesus. You see, you can't pick up the cross of Jesus if you don't empty your hands first. You can't pick up the cross of Jesus if you don't empty your hands first. It said Simon came out of the country. They say he was on a journey and probably had numerous bags and things with him. Can you imagine him going to the cross and Jesus falling down before him and them pressing him into service, as it says, making him pick up the cross for Jesus, and him going, you know what, I got these 14 bags, but I'm going to try to do it anyway? That wouldn't work, would it? Imagine this. Maybe this will hit home a little better. What if you're fixing to have surgery and the surgeon walks in and he's got a 50-pound dumbbell in each hand? And he comes in and he says, hey, you know what? I'm fixing to do surgery. This is exactly what's going to happen. And you say, oh, hang on, I got a question. What are you going to do with them dumbbells? He said, what are you talking about? I ain't got no dumbbells. You'd think he's crazy, wouldn't you? You certainly wouldn't want him doing surgery on you if he's holding 50-pound dumbbells in each hand the whole time he's supposed to work on you, right? Right? You want him to put them down, right? In our Christian life, how many times have we hold those dumbbells in our hands? You see, if we're going to pick up the cross, if we're going to do what Jesus tells us to do, we got to put things down. We got to put things down to be able to pick up the cross of Jesus. And lastly, we've got to carry on. Look at the last part of Mark 8:34. If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. Pick it up, put it down, carry on. Why is it important that we bear the cross of Jesus? Why is it important that we bear the gospel and we tell everybody that we come in contact with what Jesus has done in us? For one, he tells us to. He tells us to. Last passage for the day, Matthew chapter 9. I'm getting really close to being done, so stick with me. All right? Matthew chapter 9. Verse 36 and following. Seeing the people, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest. Jesus summons his 12. This is chapter 10. Jesus summons his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out, to heal every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. Now the names of the 12 apostles are these. The first, Simon, who is called Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James the son of Zebedee, and John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out after instructing them. He took 11 guys, 11 nobodies who had failed in every religious form that they could. And he literally changed the world with these 12 guys, and one of them was a traitor who ended up leading to the death of Jesus, right? Judas Iscariot. Right? The harvest is plentiful. Why do we need to bear the cross? Why do we need to tell people about Jesus? Because the harvest is plentiful. Did you realize that a recent poll of non-church attenders, 80% of them said, if somebody will invite me, I will go. Now, when he says in verse 36 here, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited like sheep without a shepherd. You realize being a sheep is not a term of endearment. Right? You realize he's saying these people ain't got a clue of what's going on. These people, they're just wandering around. Sheep aren't smart animals. Sheep can't take care of themselves. Sheep can't do anything without the shepherd. Yet he's saying that's what we are. But I'm a sheep. I'm not that smart. But I know that if 80% will say yes, that's pretty good odds. And the reason they're not coming is because we're not asking. So why don't we invite people? Harvest is plentiful. The workers are few. The reason the workers are few is because everybody who claims to be a worker ain't a worker. How many of you ever worked with somebody that wasn't worth their salt in what they did? You ain't got to raise your hand. It may be somebody in this audience. I don't know. Workers are few. Maybe it's because they ain't workers. Right? Just like the surgeon with the dumbbells in his hands, he renders himself ineffective. He can't effectively do surgery, can he? I mean, he could make some cuts, he could do some damage, but he couldn't do surgery. He couldn't carry that out. Maybe that's us. Maybe because of the baggage. Maybe because we're not who we claim we are. Maybe that's why we're not seeing growth. Ouch. He says we must beseech or pray that the Lord of the harvest will send out workers into his harvest. You see, the problem is not with God. God's faithfulness is unquestionable. It's not that God isn't ready. It's not that the fields are not white, ready for harvest. It's not any of that. It's that we as the church are sitting on our pew with the blessed assurance that Jesus is mine and we don't want to share him with nobody else. These guys prayed this. He immediately sent them out. Immediately sent them out. If you're not serious about following Christ, if you're not serious about putting down the bags and following him and carrying the cross for him, carrying the gospel with you, then don't pray for him to let you do that. Because if you pray that, he will send you out. As a Christian, that is our commission. We are commanded to do that. It's a great commission. Matthew 28, 16 through 20. But the 11 disciples proceeded to Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus had designated. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some were doubtful. And Jesus came up and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. It wasn't a recommendation, it was a commission. He told us to do it. And you see what happened? They came together, they worshiped, and then they were sent. This morning, we have come together, we have worshipped, and it's our time to go. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for your word. God, I pray that we don't do what we do many, many times. Hear the word, realize the truth of the word, and leave here no different than when we came. So God, just as you have convicted me of areas in my life I need to get right, bags I need to drop, God, I pray that through the Holy Spirit here in this place this morning, God, you will speak to us. You will convict us. God, if there's one here who's never accepted you as their Savior, God, may today be the day of salvation. God, for those of us who have, God, I pray that we will be what you've called us to be, what you've commanded us to be. We will quit playing the games. We will follow you.